Hi and welcome to the second episode of the speech review. Now today, as before, we are analyzing Dr. Martin Luther King's iconic I Have a Dream speech. In our first episode, our focus was on the exordium or the introduction to the same masterpiece. And today, the question of this episode is, does this speech have a narratio? And before we even proceed to answer, address, or approach this question, allow me to lay out some brief facts that will help us come up to speed, understanding what we mean when we talk about this part of a discourse. It is important for us to note that the ancient rhetoricians categorized this as the second part of a discourse, which primarily appeared in judicial or forensic oratory. Now, this doesn't exclusively apply in forensics. It operates also in deliberative and ceremonial discourses, right? This is the part of a speech where the rhetorician sought to establish context for his subject matter, or he outlined or highlighted important facts that were relevant and important to the cause he was espousing, and it helped a lot in aiding a jury's grasp on the point at issue. And I'm going to prescribe tactics that the ancient rhetoricians applied when dealing with or treating this part of a discourse. Now here, the first thing they did was to advance relevant views summarized by other authors, other speakers, and orators. The second thing they did was to summarize relevant views that they themselves were about to espouse or to refute. And they also prescribed or set theory parameters to gauge whether or not an orator has judiciously, has effectively and satisfactorily drafted and or dealt with their statement of fact. And these three parameters are: first, brevity. The second parameter is the parameter of precision. Third but not least is the parameter of plausibility. That is always dependent on the response of the audience and to whether or not the orator has achieved the end result, which is the purpose or objective of his discourse. Now, does Dr. King's speech have a statement of fact? Focus our attention on the second paragraph, and there we shall see that he opens up this paragraph by the phrase, quote unquote, 50 years ago, and that is a telltale that prefigures, that signals a narration, right? So the clear-cut answer is yes, Dr. King's speech has a narratio or statement of fact. Now let's proceed therefore to see how he applies the aforementioned principles. To what extent we see that he makes his statement of fact short but precise, right? Now those are the parameters of brevity and lucidity. He makes it short but yet to the point. Now, I personally favor shorter statements because of the kind of audiences I deal with. Now, usually when you are dealing with people whose attention span or concentration span is limited or short, it is best to use short or brief statements so that you don't lose them along the way. And another risk of having extrapolated statements is that sometimes it is hard to keep up with the train of thought, right? With the development of ideas through long statements, through a variety of punctuations. Sometimes people lose the focus, get distracted, get bored or confused just before they get the gist of your statement or prose. So Dr. King favors or opts for a short one, and yet he makes it lucid. Now, another very, very notable aspect is he uses graces of speech or language, or he uses a trope of allusion, and that is by pointing out or mentioning a deed or a document that is not only famous but also symbolic in the American social, cultural, and political structure. Right? Now, this was a document established by the American forefathers, and this was the foundation for their civilization. So he alludes or points out to that, and by doing that, he has drawn context. He has given them a place to start in understanding the breadth and the length of the subject matter he is about to treat. Last observation is he opts for the technique of summarizing relevant views advanced by others, and that simply follows logically and automatically from the Emancipation Proclamation. It wasn't his original construct.